Talking about here on my channel right now. It's all about Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively's.
All right, let's dive into this whole bizarre situation that's unfolding because apparently New York is buzzing, Rolling Stone is buzzing, the internet is buzzing, and honestly, the amount of noise around Taylor Swift, Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni, bot farms, astroturfing, conspiracy-style internet behavior, political undertones, and random influencers throwing in their opinions has created a mess so chaotic that even Game of Thrones would step back and say, yeah, that's too much drama even for us. The whole thing begins with this new Rolling Stone article that basically tries to connect Blake Lively to Taylor Swift. Not in the friendship besties hanging out sense because that era seems over, but in the sense that allegedly the same bot farm that pushed insane conspiracies about Taylor Swift being some sort of political symbol was also involved in pushing narratives around Blake Lively. Now the kicker is that Rolling Stone is spinning this as some kind of exclusive investigation, which makes it sound like they've cracked open some underground digital crime ring, but the more you actually go through what they published, the more it starts to look like a loosely connected mess of numbers, vague language, and dramatic phrasing that probably sounded good in a conference room pitch meeting but doesn't actually show anything concrete. But back up for a moment because before even getting into the details, there's this strange undertone of Blake Lively being portrayed as someone who tried to wield Taylor Swift like a weapon, as if she imagined herself as some Khaleesi-type queen commanding her dragons, Ryan Reynolds and Taylor Swift, to scorch earth on her behalf. The whole dragons metaphor came from Blake allegedly seeing them as powerful figures she could leverage during her public fallout with Justin Baldoni, especially once the It Ends With Us production issues exploded into a legal and PR war. And apparently, after that friendship collapse, because all signs point to Taylor Swift and Blake Lively no longer being close, Rolling Stone is now positioning both women as victims of the same artificial internet forces. But here's the problem. There's no real evidence. None. Zero. Zilch. Absolutely nothing in the article proves that anything coordinated happened, let alone that the campaigns targeting each woman originated from the same source. They're basically saying, we saw the same 2,000 accounts in both conversations. But when you're talking about topics as massive as Taylor Swift's album launch and Blake Lively's messy lawsuit-fueled PR meltdown, of course you're going to have overlap. That's like saying, wow, people who talk about popcorn also talk about movies. No kidding. You don't need a data scientist to figure that out. The report, created by a group called Goodia, makes it sound like they used some high-level data processing to uncover a secret internet conspiracy. But the more you read the wording, the more vague and theatrical it becomes. They keep using terms like cross-amplification network, inauthentic users, overlapping ecosystems, secondary narrative pathways, and ideological reframing. But they never show the data behind any of this. No list of accounts. No timestamps. No demonstration of coordination. Nothing that actually proves that any organized smear campaign existed. And the moment people online began reading the details, the Reddit detectives came out hard, ripping this analysis to pieces because it's missing everything that would make it legitimate. The biggest flaw pointed out was the lack of a control group. They only studied Blake Lively and Taylor Swift, but where is the comparison to other celebrities? Where is the evaluation of Meghan Markle, Sydney Sweeney, Beyoncé, Selena Gomez, or any other public figure who gets heavy online discussion? If bots exist, which yes, they absolutely do, they wouldn't target only these two. They would swarm whatever is trending. And if both Taylor Swift and Blake Lively were trending heavily, bots would naturally appear in both spaces, not because of a conspiracy, but because bot farms love trending keywords. It's how they harvest engagement. And honestly, people online are pointing out that a 2% overlap between two massive datasets means nothing. Blake's dataset had over 107,000 accounts. Taylor's dataset had around 18,000. The overlap? Roughly 2,400. That's less than 2%. And Rolling Stone is treating it like a smoking gun linking them together. It's laughable. But what makes this even more chaotic is that because Blake Lively has an ongoing harassment lawsuit where she claims Justin Baldoni orchestrated a smear campaign against her, her fans are now using this Rolling Stone article as proof that the harassment existed, even though the article does not tie Baldoni to any of this. Not one line suggests he had anything to do with bots. It doesn't even hint at it. In fact, the article itself admits they don't know who was behind the alleged bot activity. And yet some people are acting like this is some massive break for Blake. It's not. It's vague speculation wrapped in dramatic vocabulary. Not actually Golden, a legal commentator, who's been covering the Blake versus Baldoni case, jumped in and said the same thing. The article gives no timeline, no technical explanation, and no clarity about when these accounts were active. She's asking the exact questions anyone with common sense is asking. Were these accounts pushing narratives about Blake Lively now? Or were they part of the conversations in late 2024 when her PR war with Baldoni peaked? Because without dates, this report is meaningless. It's like saying, these same people tweeted about football and pizza. Okay, but when? Before the Super Bowl? After? Once? Daily? Context matters. And Golden also pointed out something important. What if these researchers were hired by Blake Lively's team? What if these experts are part of her legal strategy? If that turns out to be true, and right now no one knows, then the entire Rolling Stone article becomes a PR tool instead of an independent investigation. And it wouldn't be the first time a celebrity strategically commissioned a report to push a narrative. But even if they were hired by Blake, it still doesn't prove Baldoni did anything. Because again, none of this report says anything about his involvement. And when you actually read the white paper Goodyear released, it becomes even more frustrating because it's full of long-winded academic-sounding phrases but no practical substance. They talk about the ecosystem surrounding Taylor Swift's album, The Life of a Showgirl, symbolic reinterpretation, inauthentic narrative seeding, ideological diffusion, and all these terms that feel like they were written to impress funding committees rather than inform the public. They keep referring to a Nazi symbolism narrative that allegedly spread online about Taylor Swift, but most Swifties are confused because most people didn't even see that conversation trending. So if it was real, it wasn't widespread enough to reach the general public. The report claims bots seeded that narrative and then normal users entered the conversation to defend her, boosting the visibility of the entire discussion. That part is believable because that's how internet trolls operate. They don't need thousands of bots. Sometimes 10 coordinated accounts can push a fringe idea just enough to get real users talking, and then it becomes a wildfire. But again, nothing in the report explains why these bots would also be talking about Blake Lively. Were they political bots? Were they random engagement farms? Were they part of a larger network commenting on every celebrity at the time? We don't know because the report doesn't look at anything beyond Taylor and Blake. Another glaring oversight is that the report never answers why these accounts would even care about Blake Lively. She doesn't dominate political discourse. She doesn't trend frequently outside of scandals. So unless someone paid for a smear campaign, which again, there's still zero evidence, what motivation would a bot farm have to go after her? The report doesn't address that. It doesn't address whether these same bots talked about Meghan Markle, Prince Harry, Sydney Sweeney, or other celebrities with big controversies. It doesn't address whether the bots were part of political campaigns, foreign interference, click farming operations, crypto scams, or anything that would explain their existence. It simply says, we saw the same users in two conversations. Therefore, connection, weak, and people online are calling it out brutally. One Reddit user said, you can get the same overlap by comparing conversations about Taylor Swift and pizza. Another said, these researchers seem like they typed random percentages and buzzwords into a document and called it a day. Others pointed out that without methodology, definitions, timestamps, or screenshots of accounts, the report proves nothing. And honestly, that's the truth. If this were a real investigative breakthrough, they would list sample accounts, show their posting patterns, outline timeframes, compare narrative arcs, and show ties to other discussions. But they didn't. And worst of all, the article only analyzed posts from October 4th to October 18th, 2025, yet uses that small window to make claims about events from August 2024. That's insane. That's like studying 14 days of weather and claiming you understand the climate of the whole planet. And then, because this whole thing somehow wasn't unhinged enough, there's now people pointing out that Blake Lively bought hundreds of suspicious Instagram followers recently, all with the same profile picture of a brunette girl with glasses. So if anyone here is linked to inauthentic accounts, well, the irony speaks for itself. But anyway, while all of that is spinning, the internet is also dragging this Rolling Stone report for being soft, shallow, and strangely timed. Why now? Why release something this vague halfway through Blake's ongoing legal turmoil? Why bring Taylor Swift into it when she has nothing to do with Blake's lawsuit? Is this a PR play? Is this an attempt to sway public sentiment? Or is it Rolling Stone fishing for clicks using the names of two massively famous women? No one knows, but everyone can smell something off. Meanwhile, Dave, the commentator in the original script, keeps emphasizing that astroturfing is real, bots are real, misinformation is real, and yes, coordinated online manipulation does happen, but you need serious evidence to claim any of this applies to Blake Lively. And right now, that evidence is nowhere to be seen. Not in the article. Not in the white paper. Not in the data. Nowhere. And the tone of the commentary shifts from, "This is weird," to "okay." Now this whole thing officially smells like a strategic PR operation gone wrong. Because once people actually started reading the full Rolling Stone piece and the attached Goodyear white paper, social media exploded with breakdowns, timelines, contradictions, and inconsistencies that basically tore the entire narrative apart, and the more you follow the threads, the more it becomes obvious that nothing about this investigation is clean, clear, or convincing. The first big question everyone had was, if these bot accounts were active during October 2025, why is Rolling Stone using them to retroactively explain harassment Blake Lively claimed she received in 2024? Where is the evidence that these same accounts were also active last year? Why didn't the report include historical data, archived tweets, digital forensics, IP clusters, or anything that actually links these accounts to the timeframe Blake's lawsuit is focused on? And the moment this question started circulating, people began noticing that a lot of the smoke and mirrors tactics used in the article mirror classic PR crisis management strategy. Release something vague that sounds academic, hope the public doesn't read it too closely, rely on big buzzwords like bot farm to trigger emotional reaction, and let fans fill in the blanks with whatever narrative they already believe. And in this case, Blake Lively supporters immediately jumped on it, claiming the Rolling Stone article vindicated Blake and exposed Justin Baldoni's alleged smear campaign. Even though the report never mentions him, never suggests he hired bots, never connects him to any suspicious activity, and never even implies the Blake versus Baldoni legal battle has anything to do with these datasets. In fact, what makes the whole situation even funnier and somehow more tragic is that Justin Baldoni's name is not in the article at all except a passing mention in the context of her film drama. Not a single data point ties him to bot activity. Not a single researcher said he was involved. Not a single screenshot shows any coordination with his team. And yet Blake's defenders are acting like this was a 200-page FBI-level expose proving Justin masterminded a digital war room. No such thing exists. Meanwhile, the Swifties are equally confused because they're trying to figure out why Taylor Swift, who is currently minding her business, touring, releasing music, dating Travis Kelce, and occasionally showing up at football games, is suddenly being dragged into a bot farm story that feels like it has nothing to do with her life. Some fans think Rolling Stone included Taylor's name just to increase article clicks because let's be honest, if the article was titled Blake Lively and Bot Farms, nobody would care. Throw in Taylor Swift's name and boom, viral article, guaranteed engagement, guaranteed outrage, guaranteed SEO. But then others think Rolling Stone added Taylor deliberately to make the entire report seem more legitimate, because if you attach the world's biggest pop star to a vague digital conspiracy, it gives the illusion that the investigation uncovered something profound, even if the actual data is weak. But as soon as people started questioning the motives, the Goodyear researchers themselves came under scrutiny, with Reddit and Twitter digging into their backgrounds, asking who funds them, whether they're independent, if they've worked with PR agencies before, and why their methodology is so poorly documented. Some internet sleuths even claimed the group previously published political propaganda studies that were later debunked for lacking sources. And then a massive debate erupted. Did Blake Lively's legal team commission this research? Because if they did, that would explain the timing. Imagine this scenario. Blake's attorneys are struggling to prove she was harassed in a coordinated manner because so far no solid evidence has emerged in court. So hiring a research firm to produce a report suggesting inorganic online activity might help her narrative. Not in a legal sense because this report is not admissible evidence, but in a PR sense. If the public believes Blake was attacked by bots, then Blake looks more sympathetic. If the narrative shifts away from her alleged on-set misbehavior and towards poor Blake was targeted by online trolls, then she regains public sympathy. But the problem is, This proof is so flimsy that it's almost embarrassing. And people are starting to call it Blake's NPR Narrative Protection Report. Even more ironic, there's been chatter on TikTok that Blake Lively recently bought thousands of suspicious followers on Instagram. People noticed identical profile pictures and usernames that look like they were generated by the same bot vendor. And it's hilarious that she's being positioned as a victim of bots while simultaneously benefiting from bot-like activity herself. Whether she actually bought followers or whether these accounts followed her for other reasons is unclear, but the optics are terrible. Meanwhile, the Rolling Stone authors started getting roasted because they tried to present the overlap of those 2,400 accounts as some dramatic revelation when literally every data analyst who looked at the numbers said the same thing. 2% overlap is meaningless when analyzing celebrity conversations. Massive fan bases overlap constantly. Casual users comment on multiple celebrities. Bots follow trending topics. People who tweet about Taylor Swift often tweet about whatever else is trending that day. It does not indicate coordination. It does not indicate conspiracy. It does not indicate bot farms working for or against specific celebrities. It just means the internet is the internet. And then the biggest question arises. If these bot accounts were supposedly part of a coordinated political misinformation operation, why would they waste time talking about Blake Lively? Why would a political bot farm care about her feud with Justin Baldoni? Why would they get involved in gossip about a movie adaptation? Why would they amplify or critique a random celebrity lawsuit? The report never answers that. They try to dance around it by implying some political groups might use Taylor Swift's political influence as a leverage point, but again, why drag Blake Lively into that? What does Blake have to do with extremism or political polarization? Absolutely nothing. She doesn't post political content. She doesn't endorse controversial causes. She doesn't influence election cycles. So what is the motivation? The report doesn't say because the truth is they don't know. And that's the entire theme of the white paper. Dramatic language, vague conclusions, zero clarity. And now social media is flooded with people mocking the phrases in the report, especially cross-amplification narrative pathways and ideological reframing clusters. Because it sounds like something a college student writes at 3 a.m. when they're trying to hit word count. A sociology paper. Meanwhile, the Blake versus Baldoni lawsuit continues spiraling in its own separate tornado. Blake has struggled to prove her claims. Depositions leaked. Testimonies contradicted her. Crew members pushed back against her narrative. And audiences began losing sympathy after behind-the-scenes reports exposed behavior that didn't align with her victim narrative. So this Rolling Stone article feels like a lifeline tossed into a sinking ship, except the lifeline is made of wet cardboard and sinking faster than the ship itself. And even stranger, nobody from Taylor Swift's camp has commented. Not a word. Not a tweet. Not even a like on Instagram. It's clear Taylor wants nothing to do with this, which only adds to the suspicion that her name was dragged into the article without her involvement. Most Swifties believe the friendship between Taylor and Blake is over anyway. There's been no sightings, no interactions, no birthday posts, no public support during Blake's legal drama. Some fans think Taylor distanced herself because the Blake versus Baldoni situation got messy. Others think Ryan Reynolds' snide jokes about Travis Kelce created tension. Others believe Taylor simply outgrew the friendship. Whatever the reason, Taylor appears completely uninvolved, making Rolling Stone's attempt to connect her to Blake's drama even more bizarre. And to add more fuel to the fire, after the article was published, dozens of digital forensics experts went online explaining how bot detection actually works, and how the Goodyear report fails every standard. Real bot investigations track behavior patterns over time, identify clusters, analyze IP proxies, compare tweet velocity, examine engagement spikes, and run coordinated activity heat maps. None of that is in this report. Instead, it's basically, we saw some accounts posting a lot. Maybe they're bots. Who knows? And the funniest part is that one expert posted, if this paper was submitted in my undergraduate class, I'd give it a C4 effort. But that didn't stop Blake's fans from celebrating as if she won a Nobel Prize. They're claiming this proves Blake was targeted, that Justin had a hidden army of trolls, that Taylor and Blake were victims of a shared attack, that the internet was manipulated, that Blake's reputation was unfairly destroyed, and that the lawsuit should now be taken more seriously. Except none of this report says anything about Justin Baldoni. None of it suggests Blake was targeted for her lawsuit. None of it explains why bots would swarm her. None of it demonstrates coordination. None of it changes anything legally. Judges do not read Rolling Stone. Courts do not use vague bot reports as evidence. Blake still has the burden of proof in her lawsuit. That hasn't changed. Meanwhile, Baldoni's team is reportedly amused because Blake's attempt to paint herself as the target of a digital conspiracy is making her look more desperate. And honestly, even fans who like Blake are starting to say the same thing. If she has real evidence, why hasn't her team submitted it in court? Why rely on magazine articles? Why rely on vague reports? Why rely on PR narratives instead of actual proof? Because at the end of the day, this Rolling Stone story seems to be doing the exact opposite of what Blake needed. Instead of backing her up, it's highlighting how flimsy her claims are. Instead of validating her case, it's exposing the weakness of her narrative. Instead of helping her win public sympathy, it's making her look like she's reaching for anything that sounds even remotely supportive. But the story isn't over, because after the article dropped, Goodia posted a statement online defending their research, saying their language was academic and that they were trying to make the report accessible to non-experts. But people weren't buying it because the statement still didn't include any missing data. They didn't provide examples, charts, control groups, timestamps, or account histories. They just kept saying, "Trust us, the methodology is sound," which only made the backlash worse. And then Rolling Stone released a follow-up article trying to clarify the confusion, but instead of cleaning up the mess, they accidentally made it worse because they doubled down on their original claims without offering additional evidence. So now the entire internet is stuck in this strange circus where a celebrity lawsuit, a vague bot investigation, a major magazine, and a bunch of confused fan bases have all crashed into each other like a 20-car pileup. And through all of this, Taylor Swift is sitting somewhere sipping tea, preparing for her next tour, entirely uninterested in the chaos swirling around her name. And that is where part 2 wraps up. The story continues spiraling with more questions than answers, more speculation than facts, and more drama than clarity.